Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and welcome to another episode of Haunted Gaming. Today we're taking a look at something known as Polybius, and I know a lot of people might be wondering, Muda, haven't you already talked about Polybius? Well, when I covered creepypastas, and don't worry, I will still cover creepypastas, and today is sort of a level of that, I guess you could say, covering a creepypasta. The third creepypasta I ever looked at was actually Polybius. I remember making the video a long time ago on the good old-fashioned crap top. I actually recorded Minecraft gameplay using the trial version of Bandicam. I had to zoom into the footage, I remember, to get rid of the Bandicam logo. And it came out to be a nice video, you know, one of those nice starter-out videos on the internet, and I looked at Polybius and I was thrown away by it. For those of you who don't know, Polybius is a very popular urban legend, a very popular creepypasta. In fact, it's one of those historic video gaming creepypastas. Video game creepypastas, there's only so many of them, and only a few of them that are actually good, so for Polybius to stick out, it is pretty impressive. Now, the creepypasta isn't really long by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's actually really short. And, you know, if you look at it, for example, you'll find out that it could honestly just be read in a couple minutes, or even less if you wanted to. Now, the entire story about it was essentially Polybius was a rare arcade game that was released in 1981 by a company named Sinneslotion, which we're going to assume that it is German in of its entirety because of it being roughly translated to sense deletion. Now, it was only released around Portland, Oregon, although some people claim to see it around multiple parts of the US. And then the interesting thing about it is that it was a very popular game despite nobody even knowing anything about it nowadays, or at least having a photo of it from back then. Now, while you played the game, it essentially played around like a game called Tempest, which was just a little shooter that was released on us. It was a bullet hell shooter where you basically went around a map, I guess you could say, shooting things that were coming out from the center of the screen. Now, players apparently reported seeing really strange things like, you know, women crying, and some people get nightmares, they, you know, develop amnesia, they'd have these mental blackouts, and some even actually killed themselves. The interesting thing, though, is that as people played the game, people in black suits would come out and collect records from the game as well. And these people didn't take, you know, money, they didn't take anything like that. All they needed was the data collected after people had played these games. And a lot of people then assume that this is just due to a government conspiracy all behind it. People were from the government making, you know, people play test this game that was causing people to actually kill themselves at the end of the day. Now, there was a link to this in MKUltra, and I could really talk about MKUltra all I want, but I'm going to save that for another video. In fact, I've already made a video on MKUltra, but I feel like doing it again, you know, maybe like an hour or something long video just focusing on that entirely. Because MKUltra is an entire project run by the CIA that's actually happened where people from the United States, Canada, whether it was military institution, intelligence agencies, universities, medical doctors, people from every group, every profession of anything combined together to run this mind control, you know, human experimental operation on people, where a lot of people were actually affected by it. You know, you had LSD tests for which drugs would cause people to open up more effectively, and various situations like that. In some cases, sleep deprivation, all that kind of stuff. MKUltra was a huge umbrella for projects done, and Polybius sort of fit into that with what it was causing people to go through. Now, there is no exact full-on link between MKUltra and Polybius. It's just more of this assumed thing that really happens. I sort of assume that from its perspective, it being sort of this government conspiracy, and moving out to the fact that it's just, the symptoms involved in it are just so similar to something that you would see in MKUltra, or an aspect of MKUltra, sorry for that. Now, in the end, nobody has managed to get the original actual ROM from the 1981 or the 1998 arcade cabinet, the one that apparently mysteriously reappeared again, then disappeared. Nobody has a ROM of Polybius at all. In fact, despite its popularity, it is a game that nobody can play. And there's a very simple reason for that. It doesn't exist. It simply does not. This is a creepypasta, it is an urban myth, it is something that is just there to sort of give us the spooks, but in the end, it's a nice campfire tale, and it doesn't really exist. But I could end the video over here, but frankly I wouldn't. That's just a rehashing of this creepypasta that I've already shown you guys. So today, we're going to take a look at the official Sinneslotion site and play at least one remake of the game entirely. Polybius, believe it or not, actually has 3 copies floating out, 3 versions of the game. One of them is a homebrew Atari version, which you can download and play through an emulator. One of them is actually a game we'll be playing today, where it's created by a fan group on the PC, and one of them is available right now on the PlayStation 4, and you can play it using the PlayStation VR headset. I don't know how exciting it really is, personally myself, but it looks rather interesting. So we're going to take a look at the Sinus Lotion website. And the Sinus Lotion website is actually a fan website run over here. In fact, if you read, so you want your own Polybius cabinet. Welcome to our Easter egg for Polybius. This is an attempt to recreate the Polybius game as it might have existed in 1981. We hope to synthesize many of the descriptions of this game into a coherent whole that would approximate the urban myth. So of course it's not actually the full version of Polybius, it's not even close to it. It's just a bunch of people who really cared about this game and really cared about the creepypasta and actually remade the entire thing. Looking forward into it, you can actually see the original history of it, which this gives you more context than the official creepypasta, which is on the creepypasta wiki. Over here you can see a Simpsons advertisement, which, believe it or not, actually was aired. This was an episode that was aired on September 24, 2006. I believe it was called Please Homer, Don't Hammer Him. Basically, in this episode, Bart Simpson and the entire family goes to this interesting mall, I guess you could say, and, well, this very rundown mall. And essentially what happens is Bart goes to an arcade, he goes to play Triangle Wars, and right to the next of it, there's a Polybius arcade cabinet, which, of course, is referencing this urban myth. In fact, if you look at the cabinet, it even says property of U.S. government entirely. Interesting stuff. Now over here, you can actually look more into it, things such as Oregon Arcade, suburb of Portland, you get sleep disturbance, nausea, and game aversion. These effects spawned a number of rumors ranging from government mind control experiments to the supernatural. So yeah, MKUltra all the way to ghosts, which none of them exist because, of course, Polybius is nothing but a mere myth. Now you go into it, it'll actually show you the one picture that everyone shows of the cabinet entirely. It's very grainy, very, of that era, I guess you could say. This is the only one that's over there, and even the author of this website believes that it is photoshopped, and it is very much photoshopped. Obviously, the arcade cabinet doesn't exist. You can make anything look like that and add these kind of filters anyways. Going further into it, these are more pictures of the cabinet, and some of these are clearly fan-made. Some of these are clearly there just to add more to the effect of this creepypasta, so to speak. But one thing that it does prove is that this creepypasta definitely has an element of it's definitely something that has its hooks sunk into the horror video game community. A lot of people reference Polybius, and in some ways I'm sort of seeing a resurgence of this creepypasta here on the internet as well. Polybius is an important creepypasta. It is one of those stories which not only was one of the first, 10 stories I've ever read on this series on covering creepypasta, but it's actually one of the first stories that really did hit to me. It was one where it was very short, very sweet, and it actually gave you as much information as you needed to. In fact, it let you fill in the rest of the information on your own, which was amazing for a creepypasta, by the way. In fact, I think more should do that rather than giving you a whole bunch of expository, which completely just drains somebody's brain out entirely. But I think that being said of itself, we're actually going to go check out the Polybius game entirely. So let's go and see what this fan-made game is more so like, so we get a better idea of what Polybius really is. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is Polybius by Sinus Lotion. This is the PC version of the game currently running right now. And nothing is more important than playing some of this Polybius stuff going on over here. Now, as far as the introduction goes, we basically hit the start key. It's got this sort of trippy Tempest-like feel to it. Now, of course, one thing to consider is the actual controlling of the game is rather difficult. In fact, I don't think I can actually control the game, or rather, I think it's actually moving on its own, so I don't know if I can really control it. I'm running the game through some sort of a wrapper just because it's actually kind of difficult to somewhat run over here on this system too. I don't know if it's my computer having an issue itself. I've tried running it through virtual machines and it's not really having too much of an effect. So essentially, one thing is to consider, if you are having any epileptic issues, like I said earlier on, do not watch this, alright, because skip to another part. I'll probably have an annotation up. This game is going to cause you some massive issues if you are of the epileptic variety. If this game is gonna, if you are prone to that, do not watch it. So here we go, you got sort of this Tempest-like vibe going on over here, and all the high scores are really present. Now, you've got all these other players, Dez, SHT, CDP, Emma, JCC, with all these varying high scores. They got about 203,100, all that kind of stuff. And as far as I can say, the actual graphic engine behind it is pretty interesting. We can in space go through as much as we want, and that's really about all the Polybius has to offer. Now, throughout this experience, you're going to be given sort of these flashing messages, sort of subliminally, I guess, to an effect, and that's also present on the Atari version of it too, that is floating around on the internet. I don't know much about the PS4 variant of the game since I have not played the PS4 variant of the game at all. And of course, over here you can press fire or whatever you want to do. I got 1 credit, but I, of course, don't really know what the actual controls for this entire experience is. Pressing Z, it seems like we're zooming into this world, if you will. And we got one little flash, in my opinion. We got like one little flash gig. See, all those little flashing messages in the background are really giving us something. So I'll actually end up pausing it and creating individual screenshots right after the segment so you guys can flip through and see what they really mean. We're getting hit around over here. It doesn't seem like I can really control my character too well. The controls aren't really... Oh, here it is. These are the controls. It seems. Or maybe the game is controlling itself. No, I am definitely controlling it. I'm definitely controlling it. Apparently it uses WS to move left and right. And if I use Z, I'm actually shoot towards them. The game isn't exactly easy, but it's got these vector visuals to it. It looks kind of nice. It's got a lot of things flying around towards me, so I don't really know how much lives I have. And this is really the game of a nutshell. I don't think there's anything to really get out of it. I know one of the words that are flashing are obey, but I don't think there's much more to the game, anything like that. I don't think there's any bosses that show up. It's not making me want to kill myself necessarily. But now we're getting like an alien flying towards me, or at least what looked like an alien. These images are flashing so fast that I can't really picture what goes on. Now, I don't know if there's any screamers to this. In fact, I don't even know if this is really virus-prone software, so go into it with your own choice. Fire through a virtual machine, fire it on a burner computer, that's about it. But I don't think there's much more to check on, say Polybius, really, rather than what we're seeing right now. The game is simplistic, it's got these flashing images, and frankly, it's a remake of a creepypasta game that really doesn't exist. Now, what we had essentially seen in Polybius was a set of flashing images, which I will actually just play through right about now, just because due to the fact that we do need some context on what we saw. Because of the rapid flashing of what we were seeing, there wasn't really much else we were getting out of this entire story, so to speak. We got the words obey, we got things flying towards us, and I guess if you're prone to things like jump scares, it won't be that fun of an experience to you. And if you have epileptic issues, you probably don't want to be playing this game considering what we were just seeing right now. But that was Polybius in a nutshell. We played the remake version of the game, and it's got to be popular to be getting warranted remakes of games, let's be serious over here, of creepypasta games that do not exist. Now, of course, Polybius, we can always go argue about the fact that it was never proven to not exist, but it doesn't exist. This is an internet campfire tale, that's all about it. But it has 3 different variants that you can go out and play. The PC version, apparently there's an Atari version floating out on the internet, and the PS4 version that uses virtual reality as well. I don't know if that really has things like obey flashing towards you as well. Again, I haven't played that version of the game, but if it is Polybius, maybe it should have that kind of stuff to it. But then again, I've seen weird reports of games that are missing tons and tons of information. Now, that being said, that was really all I had to say about Polybius. A little dip back into the Polybius pond, and a story that was really about a mysterious company creating a game contracted by the United States, probably a government agency that was linked to the MKUltra umbrella. You ended up getting a game that was a blip upon many blips of that radar, and I think all this really does lead us into is a future video just covering MKUltra entirely in of itself, because it does cover things from gaming to mind control to drug usage to any different kind of a thing under its CIA umbrella. That being said, that was Polybius, the very little known creepypasta, the 2-minute long creepypasta that spawned a lot of referencing to not only major, massive pop culture, but a lot of the gaming community and the creepypasta community around there. Truly, it was a historic video gaming creepypasta of its time. Not saying that nowadays it doesn't hold up. Again, the fact that we didn't get much context leads to a story that, frankly, we fill in through ourselves, and it ends up being a story that I find to be unmatched in some ways. That being said, If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. This is another episode of the Haunted Gaming series. We looked at Polybius. We'll look at something like Polybius sooner or later. And frankly, it was fun to actually not just look at the story once again, but also look at it from a more contextual light, and frankly, actually be able to play the game that I didn't play back then. Back then, I simply recorded Minecraft footage. Now I actually recorded what is Polybius, and it was pretty interesting, let me tell you. It was a very interesting look at what we had just seen. That being said, this has been another episode of Haunted Gaming. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.